this week, councils, including South Northamptonshire, have been at the High Court in London to try to block the government's plans for high-speed rail. The HS2 high-speed line would cut through the south of the county on its way from London to Birmingham. Businesses, residents and well over a dozen councils are behind the judicial review. Campaigners arriving at the High Court on Monday to begin the case voiced their concerns.
I don't think it matters where they put HS2. A country the size of Great Britain doesn't need high-speed rail. We need better railway networks that are existing, not high speed.
To rip up the Chilterns and the countryside for a world that is effectively bust at the moment is ridiculous.
It's just fraught with all sorts of loopholes. Nothing has really been done adequately to justify a project like this.
All we hear from the other side is rhetoric. They say it will cure the north-south divide. But, if I believe that, I think I would say, OK, come past my garden.
Well, today's the last day for councils like South Northamptonshire to have their say. 5 judicial reviews over 7 days taking place at the High Court, and there could be another 18, we're told, in the new year. Joe Rukin is from Stop HS2, joins me now. Joe, good morning.
Morning, Stuart.
Have you been at the High Court each day?
Yes, pretty much. Didn't get to go through all of Wednesday, but that because of the Chancellor's autumn statement, which he put back HS2, but they didn't actually bother to tell HS2 Limited that they delayed the project. It's been going well, I think.
In what way did the Chancellor put back HS2?
Basically, Stage 2 was meant to be announced before the end of this year.
That's Birmingham to Manchester.
But, and on to Leeds.
Yes.
And basically, it never made sense to us that they were going to announce it before the ruling on this judicial review, because they'd look really silly if they announced it and then the judicial review came in and said they'd acted illegally. And finally, the pennies dropped there, and it's clear that now they'll be announcing that after the judicial review has reported, because although we finish next week and it's probably going to go on till Wednesday the way it's going now, we don't actually get a verdict until end of January, start of February.
So it'll be then before we hear anything more about the second phase. What have you learnt in the past few days that's new, if anything?
Oh, quite a bit, actually. For 2 years, we've been asking for the peak, for the loading figures, for the passenger numbers on the West Coast Main Line. And the Department for Transport basically said, no, it's a state secret, it's commercially confidential, which, bearing in mind you just had an open franchising process where all the bidders have got to know what the figures are, you would have thought that it's not commercially confidential in that, it's open, and maybe that's part of the reason that what happened with the Virgin and First Group franchise debacle happened, because the figures weren't correct. But anyway, they've finally given us those numbers, and in peak hours coming out of Euston in the evening, the trains are at 52% loading, so they're half empty.
This is despite people talking about having to stand, though, Joe. We hear that all the time.
Yeah, but no. That's it. This is it. Peak hours. Peak hours is when the fares are higher. And the reason that you've got loads of people standing after 7 o'clock is because that they're priced out of the trains that run between, say, 4 and 6 coming out of Euston. And the same going down to London in the morning. In peak hours, it's just prohibitively expensive. And what you have as well, you have... in first class, there's only about a third of first class being used. And this is the problem, that there are issues with the rail network that are not the result of capacity constraints, but the result of the way the fare structure is implemented.
Right, OK, let's just get back to what the government is saying about that, because obviously you campaigners have been making the points that you're making this morning about capacity, about the route and so on for some considerable time, and the business case doesn't hold water. The government is saying this scheme is absolutely essential. If, number one, we're going to make sure that people travel in a more environmentally friendly way, before you laugh, and number two, to make sure that we do solve the north-south divide, that we connect London to other major centres in the UK, and also that we actually create jobs and businesses in places like Birmingham and Manchester and Leeds. Now, that sounds, on the face of it, to be good for the country and good for the economy, Joe.
Yeah, well, the thing is that the problem that you've got there, you've got a lot of rhetoric that sounds like it must be true, but when you look into it, it's absolute hogwash. Like the very first point you made there, I started laughing, sorry, because the environmental case has been knocked down right away. You know, basically, because you're talking about high-speed rail, you use an exponential amount of energy to get to 250 than you would to get to 125 currently. Even the Green Party is against HS2 based on the environmental impact.
And what about the wider economic benefits?
Well, the wider economic benefits, they say, see, this is one of the things, it's about curing the north-south divide. That's absolutely ridiculous. You look at the experts in spatial economics, and they're all saying, well, actually, especially when you've got a dominant city like we've got with London, then what you'll see more stuff sucked towards London. It's all about getting to London. In terms of redevelopment, right, the only place that the government want to redevelop is around Willesden Junction, Old Oak Common.
In the London area.
In London. That's why that station in the middle of nowhere has been put on, which also really jacks up the cost.
Okay, let's just come back to this. Let's just come back to the case that's ongoing. Having heard what you have today, how likely do you think it is that places like Northamptonshire, the south of the county in particular, are going to see this line built?
That's an open-ended question, I'm afraid, Stuart. I think we've got a great chance of stopping this. Obviously, how this case goes this week is anyone's guess. There's been good points, there's been bad points, but no, we are quietly confident that sense will prevail.
Okay, Joe, we have to stop it there.
It's not just a legal challenge, it's whether they've got the money to pay for it as well.
Okay, Joe, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme. Joe Rukin from Stop HS2, and as Joe said, those judicial reviews probably going on until Wednesday now. There's 5 of them being heard over a 7-day period, so probably running on until Wednesday, and then there could be, we're told, another 18 more judicial reviews in the new year, and the announcement about the next phase of HS2 from Birmingham on to Manchester and Leeds, according to the Chancellor's autumn statement, not now going to be made until after the outcome of the trial, or the judicial reviews, I should say, that are currently taking place at the High Court.